market rents were, let's say, $500, Section 8 housing would get you above market rents. It was actually weird. Rents are really, really suppressed as opposed to the one that is on market. And we have several years left on this loan. I had always heard government money, you're getting Section 8 housing, you're getting these loans, USDA. Hello and welcome. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino. And in this how-to video, we are going to be talking about the government shutdown, and more specifically, how the government shutdown is going to affect your multifamily portfolio, or for, in that case, any portfolio you have out there in real estate. Now, let me start out by saying it's interesting how back in 2018, the narrative was being spun a certain way when there was the first shutdown under Trump's administration. And now we have a different narrative. And it feels to me as if there is a continuing resolution, that CR bill that would have been passed, that they passed in the House, that went into the Senate, and all the Republicans, signed it. And you have Democrats that didn't sign it. That continuing resolution would have allowed the government at least to stay open for certain functions while they were able to work and negotiate for the next 7 weeks. But the Democrats decided not to sign it. The government shuts down. We've been through this. And I'll take you back to 2018. Why did I mention that? Because in real estate, specifically multifamily, I had always heard government money, you're getting Section 8 housing, you're getting these loans, USDA, it is guaranteed money. And I sort of found out the hard way that it's not always guaranteed, especially if you have a USDA loan. And in 2018, I chuckle because every time I think about the story, it just makes me want to cringe. We had just closed on a property. It was a 64-unit property. 40 units of the property they were market rate. There was a little 24-unit on the same plat map, but that was still under the USDA loan. So we had never owned a property like this. We had about 1,000 units. We'd never come across a property like this. We bought it at a great cost basis, and we got it out of foreclosure. We didn't understand the USDA loan, but people were telling us, it's guaranteed money. Don't worry about it. So when the government shuts down, let me back up also on this point. The whole processing of these loans, it's not market-based. It's a lot of paperwork. You have to verify incomes. I mean, we still own the property, but rents are really, really suppressed as opposed to the one that is on market. And we have several years left on this loan. But when we took it over, literally the next month, the government shut down. Checks stopped. Processing stopped. It was a nightmare for us. I remember we didn't even know what we were doing to begin with. And then all of a sudden the government shuts down, and that's part of the problem. That part of the government shuts down, whether it's HUD, USDA. That's the problem with this. That's one of the ways it's gonna affect multifamily. Now, Section 8 is usually local, but I'm gonna talk about Section 8 housing really quick because people are always saying, hey, it's guaranteed money. And the real truth to me about it is when I started out in real estate back in 2002, I didn't get into Section 8 housing, but in 07, 08, I started getting into multifamily, and I saw Section 8 popping up a lot. I actually used it up in Rochester for a couple of my properties. What was really interesting with Section 8 housing back then was market rents were, let's say, $500. Section 8 housing would get you above market rents. It was actually weird. I'm like, okay, I have Section 8 tenants here. I'm going to use Section 8 housing. And as my career went on, we just moved away from Section 8 housing. I started buying multifamily with Jake. I didn't get into Section 8. It's a different tenant base. The problem with Section 8 housing is there are rules. It's really more, quote unquote, of a bureaucratic system. Yes, most municipalities have money in by the first of the month, but you need to follow certain guidelines. After the year is up, the lease is up, you really have to go in, inspect, it has to get certified, make sure there's any damage. If there's any damage, you as the landlord needs to take care of it, and then the resident can, reimburse you. If not, it can become a nightmare. And it really comes down to the municipalities, location by location. I had a friend, a coach who worked at Jake and Gino, who was in Macon, Georgia. And he said that municipality, they would slow things down because Section 8, that office didn't have enough funds all the time to pay. So just go in eyes open. Don't think that all of a sudden I'm in government money, everything is guaranteed. Just be very, very careful of what municipality you're in, number one. Number two, I didn't finish the thought of what I was talking about with market rate versus Section 8. Now it appears that market rate and Section 8 housing rents are around the same. So people were going into Section 8 housing years ago because they were getting higher rents. And then also asset prices in those areas tend to be, higher cap rates, lower prices. It's not as desirable to own assets in those markets, in those submarkets, in the cities. Median incomes are lower. Those residents can be a little bit more difficult. It really comes down to what your strategy is, what you're trying to accomplish. I personally think that Section 8 housing is great if you're looking for a cash flow model. I mean, obviously it can appreciate as well, but that's not where a lot of the value is. A lot of the value is you're buying an asset, if you're thinking about it, with a future stream of revenue that is tied to government or to Section 8. Can those rules change in the future? Anything can happen. Rules can always change. It's one of the reasons why I hate 401ks. It's a contract with the government about your retirement funds. They can change ages. They can change laws about it. I'm not a big fan of it. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like Section 8. We're also not built for Section 8 housing. We're just not. We're market rate. We don't have the quote unquote paperwork or the leasing agents that deal with Section 8. But to get back to the shutdown, which is important, which is what I want to talk about, but it does lead into the Section 8 and guaranteed money. That's important. The biggest thing that I think that's going to happen with the government shutdown that's going to affect multifamily and specifically real estate is if it's prolonged and it goes for a long time, does the economy, does the sentiment in the market start to say, oh, I don't really know. I'm not really sure. Because when there is uncertainty in the market, things don't happen. And that's how it's been for the last few months. Are interest rates going to drop? Are we in a recession? Are banks going to lend to me? Are rents going down? There's so many uncertainties. And unfortunately, these politicians are playing politics, and they're using this scenario to try to play and win the hearts and minds of their constituents. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I hate it because it's adding another layer of uncertainty. It's pretty hard to get deals done right now when things are shut down, when the market's uncertain. And that's what's going on with this. So my hope and my prayer is they get back to the drawing table, at least sign that continuing resolution, and then get into the bill and start chalking up what you want to take away, put in. I mean, another sidebar, this is all doesn't make any kind of sense, or it doesn't really matter if and only when we start taking care of this tremendous burden of debt. You're seeing what's going on with interest rates. Rates ain't going to drop if we're continuing to add a ton of debt, if we're becoming uncertain with our debt in this economy. So the biggest thing I'm going to say about the shutdown is it creates uncertainty. And if it leads to a recession, because all of a sudden, if you're in a market that has a lot of government jobs, that has a lot of military, that has people who are contractors who work for the government, and they're not getting paid, well, are you going to be getting paid? Is your market going to be going into a recession? You just need to understand that. That's why when you're going into real estate and into a market, you need to understand the demography. You need to understand the jobs in the market. If your market is predominantly military/government jobs and there is a shutdown, and every 4, 5, 6 years, it appears that that's what's going to happen. And I don't think this is going away during Trump's next term, because this is the only thing that the other side can do if they're not in power. They can threaten to shut down and make the other side look bad. Like, once again, I don't care whose fault it is. I'm just trying to figure out how it's going to affect you with this shutdown. And understand that when you're picking a market, these are one of the factors that you need to understand. So the biggest takeaway for me is it going to affect the economy, and how long is this going to take? That's the thing. If we get it reopened up in the next week, people start getting paid, then it's not a big deal. But if you're going into over 60 days, That's not a good thing for people who work in the federal government, because after 60 days, they can literally start taking a hacksaw and start hacking jobs. And once again, that's going to lead, in my opinion, to a recession, because all of a sudden you're pulling people out, maybe not in the short term, because they do have benefits and all, but in the longer term, you're creating a ton of unemployment. And multifamily is really, as we like to say, food, clothing, and apartments. It's a basic human need. But if you're going into recession and people can't afford to pay the rent, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to have to drop your rents, which affects your NOI and it affects your valuations and it affects your cash flow, and or you're going to have a lot more vacancy, which also does the same thing. So let's hope and pray that they reopen up quick. Now let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsors. And on the other side, I want to go over some other things about this shutdown and the effects that it's going to have on the economy. And we are back. Now, who stays open during the shutdowns? Well, number one, essential. Once again, that word essential. We heard this during COVID. Liquor stores, pot places, and those were essential. I mean, maybe Costco, a couple of grocery stores, those were essential. But as far as the shutdown, military, the Treasury, they're going to stay open, right? Got another one here. Agency with independent or non-appropriated funding. Social Security, Post Office, Fannie and Freddie, which is important for us, right? That's important. And parts of the IRS. I just saw the other day that the IRS furloughed a ton of workers. We were actually on with the IRS the other day, and they picked up the call. But if you're furloughing a lot of people at the IRS and all of a sudden they get backed up next year in April, beware, because if it stays closed for a long time, a lot of people that are expecting their returns and expecting refunds are going to get pushed back. Traditionally, in multifamily and in leasing, we get a pretty nice boom in April and May because of those refunds, because people get their refund checks, they can move, they've got money to go to a new apartment. Just be aware of that. Other things that are open: critical benefits, SNAP, Medicaid, unemployment, those are open. And obviously the congressional, judicial, and presidential offices. Isn't it ironic that the people that create the shutdown are the ones that are continuing to get paid? Show me the incentive and I'll show you the result. These Congress people are not incentivized to keep it open. They're getting paid. Well, what about if we all said, you're shut down, nobody in Congress gets paid. And oh, by the way, every day that you are shut down, we're going to claw back that from your paycheck. You'll see how fast they come to the table. Really easy to solve these issues. It's just so political on both sides of the aisle. Oh, and every day it's shut down, you lose a month of your pension. So by the way, if we're shut down for 2 weeks, well, that there goes a day for every whatever it is. Take away their pension, take away part of their health care. And then all of a sudden they'll come with a solution because it's hurting them. Right now, it's not hurting them. They don't feel the pain. That's the problem. You know who feels the pain? People who own HUD properties, people who are FHA, USDA, housing offices. They're the ones who are closed. The EPA, Department of Interior and Energy, projects, permits, reviews, and grants. If you're looking for that, you're stuck right now. You can't go into it. You want to go to a national park, a museum, culture, arts, they're closed, and or they have little access. So people who are on vacation who want to go see these things, they may not be able to. And I'm going to read this last one off. Most non-essential civilian employees in departments like commerce, labor, and education are furloughed. Now, whether a lot of these offices, they're bloated, they're not bloated, they should have a job, they should not have a job, has nothing to do with this conversation. They're employed. And now their careers and their futures are at the whim of a shutdown. It just doesn't make sense to me. I just hope and pray that we get this shutdown done with, reopen it, let's sign a continuing resolution, let them fight about what they want to put in, what they want to take out. That's how it should be done. And more importantly, why does this have to happen every single period? It seems as if the government seems like it runs out of money, waits till the last minute, and then decides, oh, we have to come up with a strategy or an idea or a way to keep this government funded. Could you imagine if you ran your multifamily property that way? You wouldn't last 6 months in the business. Thankfully, we don't, because investing, multifamily real estate is one of the backbones of the economy. So we have to run it efficiently. So if you're looking at this shutdown and you're in investing and you're in multifamily, these are a couple of things I really would worry about. Number one, if it does stay prolonged, see what happens with rents. Rents are dropping right now. Occupancy and vacancy, the vacancy rates are dropping as well. Vacancy is going up. Excuse me. Occupancy is dropping in a lot of markets because we're still getting all of that deliveries. All those units are still being delivered. A lot of the markets are absorbing them, but does the shutdown affect it if it stays open long enough? Be wary of that. And I think the last thing, you do have Fannie and Freddie that seems like they are open, but it's going to be a lot harder to do deals. This uncertainty, this fear, this weighing down. In my opinion, if it doesn't open up soon, I think it's going to start taking a psychological effect on a lot of the people in the industry. To wrap up, if you've got any questions or comments down below and you're on YouTube, I'd love to hear your story about the shutdown. How is it affecting your business? How do you see a shutdown affecting multifamily? I think it's such an important conversation to have because all you're hearing is from politicians. I'd love to hear from the everyday person who's actually got skin in the game and who's running a multifamily property and how it's affected your situation. And hopefully, once again, I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to sound like a dead horse, but let's get this thing solved. Let's open this up so nothing that I've talked about comes to fruition, at least nothing bad. I want to thank you for spending part of your time with me here on the How To segment. I will see you all on next week's How To. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll never miss another episode.